Now, with that said, let's start the show. And number one, I'd like to come back to Bob Davidson for his workshop series. I talked to Bob earlier today, and he told me that that's all he does anymore is work on the workshop series for New Track. So, Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. It's not all I do, but let me share my screen and we'll get right into this. Yeah, let me play this. So this is actually, I think, the seventh episode here. So of Workshop Tips and Tricks with Bob. Uh, for anyone who is new, most of you have seen me before, but I was for over 50 years, I've been a theatrical and exhibit designer, both scenic, lighting, and graphics. I started out as a carpenter in the theater, and in my spare time, I play with trains. One little update, the last time, 2 weeks ago, we talked about 1, 2, 3 blocks. I will put this up into the chat. Coincidentally, Taylor Toolworks had this. This is a great little YouTube video that shows you all different ways to use 1, 2, 3 blocks for jigging and stuff. So I'll put this link up into the chat once I get done here tonight. So you don't have to try to copy all that. So that's just a little catch up. So tonight's main topic is more power tools to you. One thing I found when I was beginning to got back into building my layout is a lot of the tools that I have for working in the shop, either at work or here at home, I have a shop in my garage, a lot of them were just too big for me to really use comfortably underneath the layout. So what I thought we'd do maybe was just look at some of the things that I use, and believe I am not a paid spokesperson for the brand that I happen to be showing you, but I just hope to show you some considerations, I think, of when you are looking for tools, power tools for working around the layout. These might be some things you want to keep in mind. So on the left, you see what I normally, I happen to like the Bosch brand. Been using them for a long time. That's my standard driver on the left, which is an 18-volt driver. It's heavy, it's big, but it's got a ton of power, and I mean, it goes all day. But you see on the right is their little 12-volt drill driver, and that's what I use now down in my workshop in the basement. It's half the size. You can see that I have kind of a normal size hand, and it's just a super little tool. They have work lights on them, so as you drill, or I have both a drill and a driver. They both have lights on them so that as you work, you can illuminate your workspace. It's just a really nice little tool for underneath when you're working under the layout. And I use this exclusively downstairs now. So again, I found Bosch. There's other brands out there. But one of the things you do want to look at is, how can you, what kind of spaces can you get into? And I really love the fact that it has a light when I'm underneath. They also make a right angle. There's a whole line of 12-volt tools in this Bosch series. They make a right angle drill. They also make, some cutting tools. I happen to have this little jigsaw. I'm going to do a whole session just on cutting and blades and things like that. One thing you'll notice on this jigsaw, if you look at it, some of you may say, oh, they put the blade in upside down. That's an upcut blade as opposed to a downcut blade. That's what I use all the time. If you use upcut blades and you put a piece of tape down on the top of your board, you don't get any tear out. So you can find them. They're out there. They also make a buzz tool. I love this little buzz tool. It is so good for carving up. You can use it to carve up styrofoam and obviously wood and plaster, and they're just great little buzz tools. So something to think about. It's just an overall good cutting tool. And then these are just some of the other tools that Bosch has in that 12-volt line: a work light, sander, tiger saw or reciprocating saw. They also have a planer, they have a router, they have all kinds of stuff. One nice thing with these is in the States here, they're sold at Lowe's. And Lowe's a lot of times will have, if you buy a bare tool, you'll get a free battery and charger. So just something to look for if they happen to have a sale going. This is the other tool that I use. I use this when I actually framed out and any of the framing work I was doing. This is a little 4.5-inch trim saw. This is a plug-in saw. It's a 110-volt saw. But it's just a little handheld. It's a worm drive trim saw. These go for about $80 on Amazon. This happens to be the brand that I have. There's lots of brands out there. But instead of having a real big skill saw or circular saw, it's just a nice little lightweight tool that's easy to use around, again, around the layout. So moving over to bench tools for cutting, my opinion, and it's an opinion only, that the best tool you can have if you're only going to have one saw is to have a decent bandsaw. One of the things you want to look at, 9 or 10 inch is typically a benchtop size. You want to look for the widest blade possible. If you can, find a saw that will accept a 1/2-inch blade, because that's about the minimum you can use to do what we call resawing. Or if you're at a table saw, you call it ripping. So you can rip with these, you can cross cut, you could do scroll work, all by just changing blades. It's nice if you can find a multi-speed unit. And the only thing I say is they're only as good as the blade you have in them. So if the blade gets dull, throw it out, get a new one. It really doesn't pay to resharpen these anymore. Used to, believe it or not. This happens to be the bandsaw that I have, but it's an expensive saw. You don't need to get that. Here's a Wen saw that's very highly rated, under $200. So just something to think about for a benchtop saw. This is kind of cool. This is just a little mini benchtop cutoff saw. They sell it here in the States at Harbor Freight. I don't know if there's a similar thing up in Canada, but you could find the same thing on Amazon, but it's actually more money. It's just, if it's too big to cut with a chopper, this is just a really nice little, but again, it's a POS, but there's this guy, Vintori, when I spend my time watching YouTube, Vintori's workshop, and he actually made a little table, a little cutting table for it. And he actually, you can watch the video, and I'll put this up into the chat as well. He shows you how to build this little off table for it. He also sells it as a kit on Etsy. I think he gets 20 or 30 bucks for it. So, you know, between 40 bucks for this, for 70 bucks, you can have a decent little cutoff tool. So just something to think about. In terms of drilling, you know, you don't have to have a drill press. Remember in a previous episode, we talked about these drill guides. What a drill press gives you is kind of a certainty of drilling at a right angle to your work. You get the same thing with this drill guide, probably better. Here's the kind of, again, Harbor Freight, kind of the cheapest drill press that's out there, at 8-inch, you know, bench top. But I put at the bottom, watch out for the chatter. And we're going to talk about chatter down the road when we talk about cutting and drilling. These things have, you know, there's wobble in the chuck. So it's only going to, if you do have a cheap drill press, always use a center punch, even in wood, to locate where you want that drill bit to be, because a cheap drill press is going to wander all over the place. Here's another one. This happens to be a pretty good rated one. Again, multiple speeds, so you could use it for both wood and metal and acrylic or plastics. So again, just something to think about. If you really want to go over the top, this, and again, I apologize, but this is what I have. I happen to have a milling machine because I do a lot of steel milling. I actually do some stuff for work. And I use this as my drill press now because it's just so stable. But it's a lot of money. So they used to be a lot cheaper. It used to be 1,100. I think it was 1,100 bucks when I got mine, which is not a lot cheaper, but. So that's kind of just, you know, a basic thing to be able to drill and cut, whether with hand or working on a bench. So tonight's tool of the week, and this is kind of goes to the found things. I had to go get a windshield wiper blade on Monday, and I go into Advanced Auto Parts, And they have this little 3-piece thumb, they're called thumb ratchets. They're little, they're about an inch in diameter. They're perfect to hold in your hand, and they accept either a 1/4-inch hex bit, as you can see, or a 1/4-inch drive socket. And you get all three of them for $4. So if you do have that, or again, you could find these up on the web. They're all over the place. So you may want to just look at that. That was just, I didn't need it, but I bought it because for $4, I said, geez, that's pretty. And they're good to get into tight places because they're so small. Well, this week's website. Recently, I have gotten into making. I got a 3D printer, and now I have a laser printer or laser cutter. So makerstock.com, and we'll go over to that. Just a real good source, even just for buying material, raw materials. What I noticed is in their buy wood, this Koskisen birch plywood. They have here this interior thin stock, and they go down to 1/32 of an inch thick plywood. So this is the stuff that, folks like Nick up at IDLA, this is what he's using, similar to this stock. And their prices really aren't bad for the thin stuff, in a small piece, 12 by 20, $9.50. So they ship very well. They package everything with it, between hardboard and so I really I've had a lot of luck with these guys. They also obviously have MDF. You can get 1/8-inch MDF from them, bending stocks, all kinds of stuff. Just seems to be real nice, plus acrylics and other materials. So do check them out if you think about it. And again, I could put that up into the chat as well. So that's tonight's show. I'm gone next week. My wife's at the Philadelphia Flower Show. But in 2 weeks, we're going to look at some alternative materials. These are things that we use in the exhibit world and in the theater world. And we'll be talking about, and I use quite a few of them in my modeling. So we will get into that in 2 weeks. That'll be March 8th.